For most of software history, the primary bottleneck was building code. A product manager wrote a document, engineers translated it, pushing the machine forward. The traditional product requirements document, the PRD, was never meant to be a strict blueprint. It functioned as an opening bid in a continuous human conversation. The gap between what the product manager meant and what engineering shipped was bridged manually. It required weeks of daily stand-ups, design reviews, and back-and-forth threads on Slack. When intent drifted from implementation, that drift was caught and corrected during those human interactions, long before the software reached production. The PRD didn't catch the errors. The conversation did. Today, that entire model is breaking down. Execution is getting cheaper, but the transmission of intent is failing. The failure is not the result of a decline in engineering skill or product management. The breakdown is happening because the crucial conversational feedback loop has vanished entirely. Give a PRD to an autonomous coding agent, and there is no stand-up, no clarifying questions on Slack. The agent reads the prose, writes the code, and proceeds directly to deployment. When that agent encounters a vague constraint or a missing parameter in the document, it doesn't stop to ask. It invents a plausible interpretation and executes it as fact. The resulting code is fluent. It passes existing tests. It survives review, rendering the hallucinated requirement entirely invisible to standard quality checks. To an AI agent, silence is permission. Traditional PRDs fail in automated pipelines because they were optimized for human receivers who push back. Agents do not push back. They blindly proceed on assumed context. Consider a specific, real-world requirement found in almost any e-commerce PRD. Users should be able to retry failed payments. On the left, an engineer reads the requirement and asks questions. Is this item potent? Reuse the ID? This thread updates the PRD, stopping drift. On the right, an agent receives the same requirement. It makes assumptions, skips the item potency check, and directly writes the code. The tests pass, the pull request ships. 6 weeks later, a user is double-charged, triggering a severe production incident. The postmortem reveals a simple root cause. No one explicitly told the agent to check for item potency, and it lacked the intuition required to ask. For a human, the cost of a missing constraint is a 5-minute conversation on Slack. For an agent, the cost of that exact same missing constraint is a forensic engineering investigation. The core problem is an asymmetry in execution. Writing guardrails for machines requires a structure completely alien to the narrative documents we write for humans. To survive agentic execution, the narrative PRD requires a companion artifact, a canonical, machine-legible declaration of intent. This diagram illustrates the solution, meaning.yaml. It breaks intent into 4 components. The first defines goals, the primary outcome. The second details non-goals, replacing vague statements with hard parameters of what is explicitly forbidden. Highly specific non-goals form the primary defense mechanism. Every non-goal written into the file eliminates an entire class of mistakes an agent might otherwise hallucinate. The third component establishes constraints, absolute technical invariants that must hold true. A constraint is rigid, like preventing double payments. The final component records trade-offs, logging rejected alternatives and exact conditions for revisiting decisions. Authorship belongs to the PM, architect, and tech lead together. The PM declares what must be true, the architect adds technical invariants, and the tech lead verifies enforceability. Together, this structured file provides the strict operational boundaries an agent requires to execute safely, compensating for the absence of a human feedback loop. The immediate objection to any new documentation standard is maintenance. Without constant upkeep, wikis rot and design docs decay. Why wouldn't this YAML file suffer the same fate? This vertical pipeline diagram maps the mechanism. The artifact avoids doc rot because it is actively evaluated against every code change. Inside the CI pipeline, an LLM judge reads the code diff, cross-references it against meaning.yaml, and asks, does this change put any constraint at risk? If the code violates a constraint or implies the system's intent has drifted, the pull request is immediately flagged and blocked. When tested in the real world, running a judge across 10 cold production diffs on a massive codebase, the results were highly revealing. This terminal output shows the outcome. The judge didn't find outright violations in the code. Instead, it returned a specific error, insufficient context, 111 times. That specific error is the target. It signals the human-authored constraints in the YAML file are too vague for a machine to execute with confidence. This diagnostic output forces action. It directs the team back to the artifact, requiring them to sharpen definitions until constraints are rigid enough to evaluate. Integrating this meaning layer into the CI pipeline gives product management a true unit test for intent, producing friction the moment documentation loses fidelity. This integration forms the basis of a broader, more reliable framework for AI development, functioning as a three-part system known as the sandwich architecture. This diagram illustrates the stack. The top slice is declarative meaning, the ultimate source of truth. The middle slice is the execution layer, where LLMs do the heavy lifting of writing code. The bottom slice anchors the system with deterministic unit tests and type checks. The meaning layer at the top operates as a probabilistic review surface. It provides an essential gate to catch drift, but it explicitly complements human code review and standard tests. It never replaces them. This framework redefines the day-to-day reality of the product manager. The core job of product management is no longer to push teams to ship faster. The job is to make human intent flawlessly legible to the autonomous systems that are now responsible for shipping. As the physical cost of code execution drops to near zero, the ultimate value driver inside an organization becomes the ability to author explicit, enforceable, canonical meaning.